So, before the clock strikes midnight, I wanted to jump on and just say how excited I am. I'm into my 13-year anniversary of being a cancer survivor. And I personally survived one of the deadliest forms of cancer out there, pancreatic cancer. And I had one of the rarest forms. And it's crazy because I had no idea that I had pancreatic cancer. In fact, I had it for 7 years, misdiagnosed. So I was being treated for gastroesophageal reflux, and the entire time I had pancreatic cancer. And you hear a lot of the times that when people find out that they have pancreatic cancer, they have about 6 months to a year to live. And by the grace of God, he walked me through this thing, because I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know. All I know is, and it's so vivid in my mind. um, I had to get up for work that morning, and I tossed and turned and tossed and turned, tossed and turned, but I had these pains in my back, and it was like this shuffling going up my back, and I had like this pain in the pit of my stomach, and it just would not go away, and it was just piercing me, piercing me, piercing me. And it was just like this little voice that was sitting on my shoulder, and I could hear this voice tell me, no, no joke, it's time. And literally I thought I was going crazy because I'm sitting there talking to myself, it's time for what? This voice said, it's time for you to go to the hospital now. And so I woke my husband up, and I said, I need to go to the hospital. Something's not right. So fast forward, we get to the hospital, and they're running these tests and different things like that. And so they ended up doing a CT scan, and they came back and said that I had a mass, a very large mass at the head of my pancreas. So in my mind, I've heard people say, oh, they've had diverticulitis and they've had, different things. Not in my mind did it ever cross that it would be cancer. And so I was in the hospital for a long time. And I remember them doing what was called an open biopsy, where they had to take this long needle through my stomach to try and biopsy, I guess, somewhere near where the mass was so that they could test it. And I remember laying down and looking up at the sky because they have this little design that's on the ceiling. And I remember this lady, which was one of the nurses, and she came after she did everything she did. She came and she whispered in my ear, and she said to me, she said, please don't mention that I told you this. She said, but when you get out of here, you need to go pick up your medical records. She said, were you aware that you had a mass at the head of your pancreas? And I looked at her and I said, well, no. She said, she said, obviously, she said, from looking at whatever she was looking at, she said it had been there since 2002. Now, fast forward, I'm in there at that moment. It's 2010. And she said, well, apparently you've had this thing, this mass, since 2002, and your doctor signed off on it. And so she said, when you get out of here, get your medical record. So that's the first thing that I did when I left the hospital. I left the hospital with a referral to a GI doctor. And so I got the referral, and in the midst of waiting for that appointment, I oh, oh man, I just get choked up every time I think about this. I'm sorry. Um, in the midst of waiting for that appointment, I requested my medical records from my physician, a physician that had been my doctor for over 10 plus years. And for him to give me 7 sheets of paper, and I've been with you for 10 years, it kind of sparked, raised some antennas in me. So it kind of put me on high alert. And so after going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with this doctor, he just refused to give me my medical records. And none of the medical records included him signing off on anything. And so, long story short, with that, I went back and forth, and I had to have an attorney request those records just so that I can get them in my hand. And lo and behold, it was in there. And so I remember scheduling an appointment with this man, and he instantly got on the defense. And I just asked him, I said, why would you not tell me something like that? That was something that I needed to know. And he looked at me and he looked at my mom, and the words that came out of his mouth, like literally, I could have choked. He said, "Well, just thank God you're not dead yet." And I'm telling you, is if I didn't know the Lord, I probably would have pimp slapped him. Um, it took everything in me not to oh man, to go in there and get busy with him. But it just it just set a fire in me from that moment forward. Like, cause for me, it was like the unknown. I had no idea what I was up against. I just knew, you know, that entire 7 years I was always sick. I was in and out of the hospital. I mean, it was so painful. Some days I could walk, some days I couldn't. Um, and it made no sense. So I get my appointment to the GI doctor, and they go in, they do a form of an endoscopy. So, and the procedure went well. The only thing is, when I came to, the actual GI doctor told me that he couldn't get past the mass because it was so large. And so, because I think at that time he was thinking that it was diverticulitis, something that, could have been fixed surgically or whatever. But once he couldn't get past it, he actually gave me a referral, an immediate referral to Barnes Jewish Hospital. And so I got my appointment for that, and I had to wait. I think I had to wait like 30 days to get in there. And in that process of waiting, it was like the devil like really tormented me, because there was a sense of doubt being human, even though I know what God's word says. It was like in those brief moments when I would be by myself, it's like the devil would literally creep into my thought process, and just, oh, you're gonna die, and you don't have long, it could be right now. And at that time my children were small, so I would find myself breaking down a lot, because I always thought about, what would happen to my kids. Nobody can take care of my kids. Like, I don't want my kids to have to be without a mom. And so I just remember just praying and praying, and it just, it sustained me. It kind of, it brought a peace over me, when I would say that prayer, say that specific prayer. And the scripture that really, really held me together was Isaiah 53 and 5. He was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, and with his stripes we are healed. And so I just kept, chanting that, I'm healed by his stripes. And I knew in the back of my mind, I knew that I had to trust it. I had to trust it. And so I just prayed all the time. And so fast forward, so my appointment time came for Barnes Jewish Hospital. And so I went on and I went to the appointment in Peoria. And there was a team, I want to say 25, 30 doctors in there. And so apparently, they put me under, they did what they had to do. But it was a waiting game because I had to wait for the results. They weren't instant. And so by this time, I went back to work, and I'm working, time is going by, time is going by. So I kind of sat it, excuse me, in the back of my mind, and just tried to live my life as if, I was okay. But deep down inside, it was a void. It was pain. Like it was like worry and anxiety. And so I can remember sitting at my desk after I just got done doing my accounts. I get this phone call, and it's from Barnes Jewish Hospital, and it was from one of the nurses. And she asked me if I was sitting down. And I said, well, yeah, I'm in my office. I'm sitting down. And she said, well, sweetie, she said, I just want to let you know that your results came back and you do have a very rare form of pancreatic cancer. And I said, did you call the right person? I was like, are you positive that these results are mine? And she said, yeah, I'm looking at the results. She had me verify my name and my birthday. And she said, this is a very time sensitive issue because the actual mass was closing in on like my ducts or something of that nature. And so it started to interfere with my breathing. Like I would have a hard time walking. It was kind of like I was suffocating. Um, and all I remember is I fainted. And I remember my supervisor coming in, and um, she took me to my parents' house. And from there, I broke down. It was just like my whole life just flashed in front of me. Um, and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I remember it was like everything that I knew to have faith, because in the back of my mind, I knew that faith was the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. So I knew that I had to have faith of a mustard seed. And if you could just imagine what a mustard seed is, it's so tiny to really trust that God is going to move on your behalf. And I broke down, and I remember our pastor coming, and he prayed and he prayed. And I just remember the words that just rung true to me was, you really have to change your thought process, and you really have to get around people that is going to speak positivity into your life and speak life into your life, and like keep that negativity away, because I had one of my coworkers, she instantly was like, so are you going to plan your funeral, and what are you going, and it like sent me over the edge. Like she did this lady didn't already put me in the ground before God then called me to the upper room. And it was just like, so from that moment forward, I got into this mode that, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So I just started, just my prayer just intensified. And I just started to occupy my mind with positive things. And so during that time, once I got those results, they set up an appointment. They wanted me to come see this doctor. And me and my family, we all went. We went to Peoria. We talked to the doctor. And I wasn't sold on the the outcome of it. I was given a 5% chance of survival if to have this surgery, which was called a Whipple. And so I just kind of did my research, and I wasn't comfortable with the amount of surgeries that particular physician or surgeon did, and it just didn't sit well in my spirit. And it was just like God was talking to me, and he was just like, this is not where you're going to have this surgery. But I knew that I was on borrowed time, because this was something immediate that I needed to do. They kept telling me, you have to have this within this amount of time frame, or it's going to be fatal. And so I remember leaving that appointment, and I wanted a second opinion, but in my mind I had no idea where I would get this second opinion from. And so I could remember getting home. I think it was a couple days after the appointment, and I was sitting in my living room, and I was watching CNN. And there was this doctor from John Hopkins that came across the screen. And this man, I'll never forget his name, Dr. Marty McCary. And he was talking about pancreatic cancer, and he was talking about the surgery that I needed. And I promise you, it was as if the TV screen was talking to me, but then the devil was on the other side. Because in my mind, it was like, how dare you think that this man, he don't even know you. He on CNN. He's on TV. He ain't got time to. You don't even know him. You don't know how to get in contact with him. You don't know nothing. And so it was just like that little form of doubt where the devil just was like, don't even waste your time. And so I remember I called up my brother and I was so excited. I was like, there's a man on TV. He's talking about the surgery that I need. Oh my God, oh my God. And so my brother is one of my best supporters, advocate. Like I'm telling you, it's just like he will go above and beyond and just with everything. And he said, why not call him? He said, what do you have to lose? And I just kept down. I just kept saying, this man don't know me from a can of paint and da 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 da. He said, all you gotta do is look him up. So when I saw that he was from John Hopkins Hospital, um, I got to researching, and so I found a number to where he was located, and so I called and I left a message. And I told that lady, I said, I don't know if he could help me. I said, but the Lord told me to call him. And if he could call me back or something, I said, I would be so grateful. So 24 hours came by, I didn't hear anything. 48 hours, I didn't hear anything. And on the third day, I was sitting at work and at my desk, and I got a call from John Hopkins. And he said, hey, he was so cool. He said, hey, this is Dr. Martin McCary. He said, you left me a message. He said, how can I help you? And so I broke down on this phone talking to this man, just telling him everything that I had gone through, because prior to me talking to him, I was having insurance issues because I was considered out of state and nobody would take my insurance. So in that little length of time, I was running around here trying to spend in my last, trying to buy insurance. And a lot of these insurances had a holding period where you had to wait 30 days and this, that, and the third. And I didn't have 30 days to wait. So these people were just taking my money. And they didn't give it back. And it was just like, it was hard. Um, and so when I found out, it was like I kept running into a brick wall, one brick wall after another brick wall, and I started to feel discouraged. But when that man called me and he said, I think I can help you. He said, this is what I want you to do. He said, send me your CT scans of the times that they did the X-rays while you were in the hospital, and send me your medical records of whatever you have. And so I sent him. I mailed over everything that I had, and so he looked at everything and he called me and he said, I think I can help you. He said, I need you to come out here. And I just literally, I broke down, because at that time, like, I was broke. Like, I didn't have a quarter to my name. Like, I literally had just paid all my bills. And I cried and I said, I can't get there. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, I'm going to put you in contact with a lady now. I want to say her name was Maureen. And I remember her calling me, and I remember her getting all my information, and she said, don't worry, I got you. And so 2 round trip plane tickets showed up in my mailbox a couple days later. And me and my husband, we flew out to John Hopkins. And as I was sitting in the waiting room, like, it was, I can't even describe to you the the uplifting. It was just like at that moment I felt like I had hope. And I think I was one of the last people to go in. And I went in, and he did my consultation and everything, and he did my workup on everything. And he said, I can do the surgery on you. He said, I need you to come back. He was like, can you come back on this date to have this surgery? And I went on and I scheduled the appointment. I get to the front desk, and this lady walked up, and she said, it'll be $500. I said, $500? She said, yeah, the consultations are always $500. And so I broke down again. It was just like, I just broke down, and I said, I barely got here. I said, the social worker lady sent me 2 round tickets. I said, just so that I could come out here, and I have to go back straight back home. And Martin, he heard me break down, and he turned around and he said, don't worry about it, I got it. He said, she free to go. He said, I'll see her on the next appointment, and that'll be her surgery date. And I just walked out of there. And I cried and I cried and I cried to the point where I almost missed my flight back home. Like I can't even describe to you. So I fly back home, and so everything checked out. Everything was good until I get this phone call. And I think it was a couple days before I was supposed to get there on my surgery. And they said, well, we're not going to be able to do your surgery because your insurance is not going to pay, and you consider out of state. And I said, well, I thought, all this was figured out. And it was so crazy because at that moment, I just felt like somebody just pulled the rug from out underneath me. I can't even describe. I just felt like I just wanted to curl up and just disappear. And so I was at a standstill, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember my brother called me, and he said, I just emailed the president of the hospital and told him your situation. And it was crazy because that the man that at that time, I don't know if he's still there, but he worked it out for me, and he told me, don't worry about it. He said, just fill out this packet of information. And during that time, my brother and I had researched that during that time Obama had given that hospital $67 million for things like that. And I remember inquiring about it. I looked it up, and I filled out this packet. The man told me, fill out this packet and you'll be good to go. It was like 30 pages. And so I filled it all out, and I got it back to them, and they said, your surgery is paid for. And like it was just like, it was really like the grace of God, because the level of issues that I went through with not having the insurance, and then being out of state, and then it was just like my time was so critical. Like I was like within a week, and I was getting worse. I was getting so worse, and it was just like it was just like God just intervened. It was just like it was so heavy for me to carry. Like I couldn't carry it all anymore. And I just said, Lord, I know you're gonna work this out. And he worked it out for me. And during that time, I was in a motorsport group, which was called Them Girls. And like I said, during that time, I was broke. I had no money. I had nothing. And I knew that I had to get there. I didn't fly this time. My parents drove me. But before I went, they gave me a benefit. Like they gave me two of them. Um, and that money that they gave me for both fundraisers helped me to get to John Hopkins. Oh my God, I get so emotional every time. Um, and that's what got me there. It helped me get the rental car to drive there because we had to drive. It took us 16 or 17 hours to get there because we had to keep stopping because I kept getting sick. Um, but it, it it carried me through, and I'll never forget that, because without it I wouldn't have made it. Um, and so I get there, and it's crazy because my baby sister's name is Kara. And I walk into this room. They had this room. It was like really nice set up, and it was called Kara's Place. And at that moment, it was just like I was supposed to, that I knew that I knew that I knew that God had a hand in this entire thing. It was just like it felt, I can't even describe to you the feeling. It was like I knew that I was supposed to be there. It was like everything had just lined up. Um and I prayed, and I went to sleep because I had to do a fasting and all that. And so when I got up that morning, I had on this WWJD bracelet, What Would Jesus Do? And I wore this bracelet everywhere. I don't know, it just felt like it made me feel like I was closer to God. And so when I went to check in to have my surgery, um, it was crazy because they tell you have to take off all your jewelry and you got to do this and do that. And so I remember the doctor coming in, and I was crying, and I told him that I was scared. And I just remember him praying over me like I've never had anybody pray over me. And he said, "You can keep your WWJD bracelet on." And I was like, "Are you serious?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said, "And I'll see you when you wake up." And so I went in, I had the surgery. The surgery took hours and hours and hours and hours, and it was like one of the longest surgeries. And I remember waking up, and my foot felt so funny because they had the IV in like my major I think vein in my foot. And the first face that I saw was this doctor. He said, "Didn't I tell you I was going to see you when you woke up?" And I couldn't speak. I mean, I could have, but I didn't have any words. And it was just the tears was just running down my eyes because at that moment, it was just like I made it. Like God gave me a second chance to be on this earth and finish what he wanted me to do. And I knew at that moment that this was my testimony, that he's like my life was spared. Um and I can't even describe to you how grateful and thankful that I was. And it was just like, because the devil was hitting me with everything that he had. And but God just kept walking in, and like, "I got this, I got this, I got this." And I knew from that moment forward, like I told God, like if you walk me through this thing, I promise you, like, I will never ever take anything for granted. Like, it really made me change my view on things, my outlook on life. I started prioritizing things that I didn't really care about before. Like, it really got real for me. And so you always hear people say, "Well, how do you know that God is real and this and that?" And it was like, this is my testimony. You know what I'm saying? And not only did he bring me through this, it's so many things that I need to talk about that God has done in my life. Like things that you wouldn't even imagine, even at a young age. And I'll talk about that on another video. Because I have a daughter with a disability. She has Down syndrome. So I'll talk about that on another segment, on how God prepared me for that without me even knowing. But again, God literally blessed this man's hands, because when I came out, I'm not gonna lie, it was the absolute hardest recovery that I've ever had, next to the 2 cesareans that I had having my children. But I'm telling you, I wouldn't change it. I would not change anything, because my steps were already ordered, and I had to be obedient to what God was telling me to do. I had to walk through that thing, and sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but God was working in the shadows. So this is literally my anniversary, and people always ask me, well, why are you so happy? Or or they say, oh, she's doing this and she's doing that. Like, God worked it out for me to be here, because millions didn't make it, but I was one of the ones who did. And every opportunity that I get to share my story, I'm going to share it. I don't care how many times I share it. I don't care who's tired of me sharing my story. And unless you done walked in my shoes and you've gotten a cancer diagnosis of some sort, then you understand what I'm talking about. And even now, with me being human, like, the devil will try to creep in, because I see a multitude of doctors, even after the aftermath of having this surgery. And like I said, I wouldn't change anything. The doctors that I see, the things that happen after the surgery, as far as what I have to take care of, I'm okay with it. It's just I had to do an adjustment in my lifestyle. But at the end of the day, God gets the glory. I mean, it had nothing to do with me, and it was just me trusting in God. And so I do have a faith tattoo that I went and got, because I'm telling you, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And even though I couldn't see it, I knew that he was working it out. So yeah, I just wanted to jump on. I just wanted to share my story, um, because I think that when you in doubt and doctors are telling you one thing, please get a second opinion. Get a second opinion. Don't just jump on the first thing. Well, they said this and they said that, because they human too, and they have human error. Second opinion, it's not going to hurt you to get a second opinion, because God wanted me right where he had me and where he needed me to be. So I'll talk to you guys later. Y'all have a good one. Bye.